Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay, and welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha. First pass, first impressions coverage. This is going to be the overall wrap-up video for the Demon Hunter. And it's going to be a little bit more truncated because we only have 2 specs to go over. So some of this might be a little bit of a rehash from the individual videos, but in case you want just the back and forth on both, and of course I'm going to mix and mash a little bit more of my either opinion or what I've sponged up from YouTube comments, or I've also poked Kib, at least from the Havoc side of things. Kib is your guide writer, your mathy connectivity point kind of person that goes over all the things and writes up all the Wowhead guides, that kind of thing. So he's got some notes for me as well, which aren't super different from what I've already gone over, but to have someone else piping in, at least in note form, while the footage plays out here behind. It's going to be me tanking on the Vengeance Demon Hunter, trying out a not Spirit Bomb build. I know, right? But I mean, I probably should have run Spirit Bomb, but Spirit Bomb is really good on trash and large AoE packs because it doesn't really feel that good on single target boss fights. And there's lots of single target boss fights in dungeons, but it's alpha. It's time for testing and looking at things and trying things out and not trying to be super meta about it. Get it? Because it's just time to figure out what's going on. And Vengeance has a lot of, movement going towards getting things sorted. But of course, a lot of things are being sorted and uploaded and saved and highlighted. So if you are missing any of the past coverage, check out the description box down below where the channel guide is listed. If you want the full unedited VOD with the comms, that is also linked down below. The channel guide has everything, all the dungeon runs, all the testing live streams, all the links to YouTube. It goes back 2 full expansions if you want to go check out like what things were like 2 expansions ago, or how huge my forehead has become. I don't know. The link is down there. And while you're down there, if you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying the coverage, I've been talking all day today, then the subscribe button is also there for my YouTube channel, which doesn't cost you anything. Even if some of you have been incredibly generous over on the Twitch stream with your subscriptions over there, subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications on YouTube doesn't cost you nothing. You could have done it already. Did you do it? If you like what you're hearing and seeing and doing whatever. But anyway. All right. Demon Hunter stuff. So the biggest thing that comes up here, I'm pulling over my notes, I've got stuff from Kib again, is that both Demon Hunters, their baseline kits are, you can see right, look at the hotbar right now on the Vengeance Demon Hunter. That's all I've got, right? There's answers for things, and obviously there is enough there, but this may be more of a problem for Havoc, as they don't have any like extra, any of that zhuzh or that je ne sais quoi, because a lot of what makes Havoc, or in some lesser way Vengeance, have that little extra sprinkling, right? That little bit of Salt Bay off your elbow is borrowed power. And the biggest thing for borrowed power is the top point here, and this is something from Kib, is the loss of borrowed power hits hard, mostly of course Furious Gaze. Obviously, legendaries, soulbinds, and conduits will hopefully make some of these things more interesting. But this applies to basically every single spec in the game at the moment. Losing borrowed power from the previous expansion always feels awful. But not to be just kind of rude, this is how the game's designed. And it's unfortunate that some specs sort of thrive with the borrowed power. Enhancement Shaman felt really good at the end of Legion. What happens? Everything changes, everything goes away, we start back over again in BFA. By the time we get to the end of the BFA right now, Enhancement can actually feel pretty good. And there are 2 different builds you could play. One, more particularly easier to run all the time, and the throughput there is fine. But all that's going away again, and we're going back to the weird caster hybrid from like Mop and Warlords era with Stormbringer, which is a whole other discussion. So both Havoc and Vengeance have this thing of, they get something else from the borrowed power that maybe should be something baseline. They don't have a whole lot of iteration in the past, but even in the Vengeance Demon Hunter video, I brought up just 2 legendaries you used to have that are way better talents, that are some of the talents you currently are sitting on with doing nothing with. Vengeance still has, let me bring up the notes here. Feed the Demon, all it does is that, but where'd Razor Spikes go? Put Razor Spikes and Feed the Demon together, right? Burning Alive and Charred Flesh. Those, no. There's just, Burning Alive is so poo-poo pants, and Charred Flesh is a DPS button in a row with Spirit Bomb and Infernal Armor, which are both a little bit of DPS and also big survivability. So what? Like I said in the Vengeance video, the cake is baked. Like, it's ready to go, but it needs frosting. And the Havoc cake is still in the oven, and maybe you turned the oven off too soon for some reason, or someone walked by and thought it was supposed to be on, and now like one of the cakes is kind of like ripped in the oven. So it needs something else. He also brings up the toolkit remains, this is they in this Kib brings up, the toolkit remains extremely similar with a nice couple of additions. So obviously for Havoc, Eyes of Rage being built into Demonic Appetite is well good. It's way more consistent. The 2-second cooldown reduction with eating lesser soul fragments up to a cap of 15 is totally fine, but it's going to probably be too strong, so it might even get nerfed. I can imagine it going to 1 second per soul fragment before too long. Also, Essence Break is definitely a better Dark Slash. The problems come into play with more things like Bladedance without First Blood is nearly unplayable in single target because it just costs too much, and only casting it inside of an Essence Break window just feels kind of forced. Word up, Senpai goes straight off the bat and said when we were testing this last 2 days that Essence Break should just be part of the core kit. Not every single spec needs a DPS, Colossus, Smash, Judgment window kind of thing. But even Kib goes on to say here, Havoc still feels the same, and the issues it's always had since it came out. The spec really needs one more rotational button to press. Playing the currently 2220-232 build plus Kyrian, which is like the demonic build, right? Demonic Appetite. They're really the same build you've been playing for 2 expansions almost. And plus your new sigil, I suppose, because of the forced spawning of lesser soul fragments is very strong synergy, which is fun. But you've basically been doing the exact same thing, and it's as active as you're going to be, and generally has to have a good feel to it. But any demonic gameplay is extremely slow without the aforementioned Furious Gaze. And of course, he says, let's not talk about Nemesis and the other issues that Talent has always had since its inception, because bleh, it's not good. I think if Blizzard wants to really make momentum work, they have to bring back Bloodlet, because that's the only way that spec really worked. Because if you remember playing with the Legendary Bracers and Bloodlet and Momentum, that actually worked because you snapshotted those windows of time and it felt like you really gained something from it, which is what everyone hates Momentum, because the trade-off for using movement for DPS, even though movement is DPS sometimes, but regardless, if you use movement tools for damage, the trade-off has to be really good, because then you sort of hamstring yourself, which is optionally you're hamstringing yourself, because you're doing more damage. But like the buff to Fel Mastery is gigantic, on top of the fact it's 50% stronger there. There's no target cap with the whole target cap weird math that I'm sure I'll go back into more here in a moment because I-beam. And it feels like it oomphed, right? Blizzard was so scared of this then. They can rebalance Bloodlet to be a strong enough, but hopefully not busted. So you can have a momentum playstyle, which obviously feeds into Bloodlet windows and sort of burst AoE situations with things like Fel Barrage, or you can have the smooth sort of cruise control build with Demonic, which does kind of beg the question, should Demonic now at a 6-second window, should it have like some of the haste accelerant that Furious Gaze gave? But that could come back as something else, right? We don't know. Covenants, Soulbinds, Legendaries, again, borrowed power. But also to keep going on the AoE capping thing, I have some notes on this, of course, that I've gone over. But to quote Kib again, AoE capping, in his opinion, won't change much for raiders. In all of Battle for Azeroth, there were only 5 bosses ever where you actually hit 5+ targets at a time in all of the raiding scene. It will, however, of course, affect the Mythic Plus scene, but as always, routes will be adjusted, meta will change, etc. Group comp, yada yada. So in raids, you're not going to even feel it. In a mythic raid situation, sure, other classes might do more AoE, but as we've said before, and if you haven't heard this yet, even if you aren't AoE capped, and say like Fel Barrage, it reads that Fel Barrage, let me actually get the whole tooltip up here. Fel Barrage says that unleashes a torrent of Fel energy over 3 seconds. The more haste you have, the more bolts fly off. And it does chaos damage, of course, over 3 seconds to the 5 enemies within 8 yards. But if you use Fel Barrage, I use it in the video on like 8 targets. It really is one of those abilities that doesn't make sense to have a target cap. I mean, all it does is limits how many bolts fly out. But if you have enough haste and you I-beam in a demonic window and grab the actual, the Metamorphosis haste window, and then you Fel Barrage, you hit everything over and 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 over again. So it's a slight tuning back of Fel Barrage, but it having a quote-unquote target cap is like whatever. Soul Cleave on Vengeance having a target cap makes no sense because A, you're a tank, B, it does no damage, C, it desynergizes with things. For example, as I patch back over, it desynergizes with Void Reaver. If you're AoE tanking and you have Void Reaver on for the multiplicative damage, I guess demoralizing shout sort of debuff on incoming damage, that's 6%. Which now could be too weak because if you have 10, 12 mobs, you hit a Soul Cleave, you're hit 5. And then you hit Soul Cleave again, you might hit the same 5. Or 3 or 4 of the same 5 and then 1 new one. So that doesn't, like, what tank Immolation Order doesn't have a target cap, but at the same time, your core ability that you're supposed to be playing around does, which is why I put suggestions in that video about maybe it should also have like a weaker version of Spirit Bomb, so you don't always have to take Spirit Bomb. But to talk about more about AoE capping still, I-beam has the new damage equals the square root of the amount of targets you are hitting. So even if abilities do not have a target cap, they have this new square root diminishing returns math. And that'll of course have to be tuned because things like Breath of Syndragosa all of a sudden on the Frost DK are way stronger than their BFA versions, up until like 12 targets. Blizzard obviously doesn't want you pulling more than, 6, 8 mobs or so. We pull kind of like aggressively here. There's one that might be already passed in the footage where we did like a, Mythic Plus pull, MDI, where you pulled like 2 packs of the small mobs and then like 1 larger pack together. But did you see how fast it died? It's still like everything got totally blended. It's a normal dungeon, I realize, but it's numbers. These are garbage characters. We're in leveling up situations, and that still got blowed up. So it really doesn't seem like it's going to do a whole lot to AoE capping because either you have limited targets, but things like Fel Barrage still hit everything, or you have the square root formula. So they're slowing down AoE overall, but they're kind of making it so it's more of a group effort. So doing your right AoE abilities at the right times will still net you a overall gain as a group. But like Bladedance has 5 targets, which means that it picks the same 5, I believe, for the whole duration, or every slash is a different 5. It's kind of hard to tell unless you pull a bunch of mobs and then you raid target mark them all or whatever. So there's little things like that. And while we bring up Bladedance, I have heard a huge thread about the fact that the 100% dodge is removed, but it's still in the database. It is, but it's not hooked up. If you look in the database, if there are spells that are hooked up with ranks, as there are many, many ranks of spells with the Havoc and Vengeance Demon Hunters, because they basically had to break apart your spells to give level up ranks. It's kind of arbitrary, it feels like, when you look in the database, the current version, which has, like 9, 12 things in a row. And then you look in the BFA version and it just lists like passive, 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 rank 2, rank 3, rank 2, rank 2, rank 3, rank 3. It goes on and on and on. The 100% dodge is decoupled with no rank, but it is showing up as a rank text, so it could come back, which is fine if it comes back. I just am not a huge fan of those kind of mechanics where you can have tank style mechanics taunted by a Havoc Demon Hunter to immediately blade dance and cheese something and then your tank taunts back. And obviously Blizzard maybe doesn't like those either. You can still do it in Metamorphosis because it's still tied to Death Sweep, but they could remove that too, or add it both back and let it be a thing. There's also PvP implications there because you could blade dance certain melee oriented stuns. I was suggested that you can do it to kidney shots, which is definitely a skill cap, and that's huge, big pog if you do that. But it looks like Blizzard has to obviously pick which of the lesser evils they want to do, and they chose to give Havoc a Mortal Strike. And not only a Mortal Strike, but an AoE untarget capped non-diminishing damage returns AoE Mortal Strike. Yeah, if you didn't see that, you can talent into a Mortal Strike on your Fel Rush, on your Demon Hunter. Havoc, of course. What the heck is that? That's so ridiculous. I don't know about that. I'm just gonna Mortal Strike the entire enemy team. That's scary to me. But they had to bring back something because they're taking away a lot of your leech, because that's been gutted rather heavily. So you're gonna be a little squishier, but they want to give some power back elsewhere, even though I still think that the soul rending nerf is way over the top, and the leech for Havoc nerf being totally yeeted, also probably pretty over the top. Hopefully we see a little bit of that come back. But that's just some of the major points here. Kib quotes here. The overall toolkit nerfs to him are kind of whatever, but the pulse of the community that he's sponged up in the Demon Hunter Discord that he saw was quite a bit angrier about it. Nerfing basically every tool that Havoc has won't change the fact that the spec will always still have answers for everything, and these specs tools will remain still a hot topic. I definitely think it's going to happen in some way, shape, or form. We'll see it. It's still going to go like blur is still good, even though it's definitely been nerfed. But oh, you still have 100% DR as well, and you're kind of immune during it. And you still have your iframes during metamorphosis. Right now, it's all this growing pains alpha kind of stuff. So we don't know how it's going to feel 6, 8 months, 12 months from now. And that's why all this stuff is going to sit here and everything archived on my channel. You can go back to Miss Pandaria. People kind of forget things sometimes. So all of it's still here. All of my old shows, all of my old testing coverage. Go back and see what people are talking about in MOP to Warlords, or Warlords to Legion, or Legion to BFA. And see how off we are on some of these things. Because it kind of keeps happening. We hope for feedback to things to move things forward, and Blizzard to, you know, shore up some weaknesses. But, you know, it's kind of still going to keep happening. We're hoping for the best. Hoping for the best. A couple more things on here that I can note real fast about the overall for both Havoc and Vengeance is that, again, they're both not changing horrifically, which I don't think needs to happen. But I do think that there should be a little bit something else. There's all these little things. Like for Vengeance, Sigil of Change, just baseline it, make it a 2-minute cooldown. Make it a 3-minute cooldown. But your sigils all should be core to... That's the mechanic, right? Sigils are a thing for Vengeance. That could use some tuning up, though. The activation time is somewhat a little bit weird sometimes, but that's why there's talent tiers for that. But little things like that, like Charred Flesh and Burning Alive should be 1 talent. Things for Havoc that are still weird, like Nemesis existing. It just doesn't work. Kind of it does as a thematic element to it, but really, the last time I think I used Nemesis was on Scorpion in the Nighthold, right? And then I talented off of it forever. There's little things that come into play about how Burning Hatred now might be so set and forget because Insatiable Hunger is still super random, because it doesn't add 10 Fury to the base. It adds it to the top end. So you go from 20 to 30 per Demon's Bite to 20 to 40, which sure, it'll average you out around 30 versus averaging you around 10 less than that, around 20. But it's still, it's like, it makes you go, a little bit. Trail of Ruin definitely got cut down, makes it much more of a single target ability. And again, one of the biggest pain points for Havoc is that First Blood is too good, which means either they're going to nerf First Blood, or not everything needs to get baselined, but Bladedance has a problem with how much it costs. It costs 5 less Fury, and this gets a little bit mathy. Damage per resource, or in this case damage per Fury, is definitely math that gets looked at because it kind of weights how things work in a rotation. First Blood makes your Bladedance cost 15, which is a huge difference than 35. The extra damage to single target is fine. That isn't really the big deal though. Chaos Strike which does chaos damage, which scales with your mastery, which ignores armor, which has the built-in 40% crit kind of thing we used to have back in Legion, with that 40% chance to give you back 20 Fury. That is 40 Fury. Why would you ever hit Bladedance when it costs 35, does half the damage, also reduced by armor, and also, anyway, obviously you're on the global, without the dodge now, it loses the additional benefit of having something that could protect you. So the chances of the Havoc Demon Hunter going, if you use Essence Break for just Chaos Strike funneling, you will hit 3 buttons. You'll be hitting Demon's Bite, you'll be hitting Eye Beam, and you'll be hitting your Essence Breaks into Chaos Strikes. Essence Break is obviously a short form cooldown, doesn't really count the same way. Eye Beam is a big, 30-second cooldown, or 15, depending on how your Demonic Appetite works out. But that's still like a 2.5 button rotation. And I've talked about it before many times on the channel or on the stream. Once you get down to that few buttons, something is missing. The meme is that, oh, Arcane Mage only has a 1-button rotation, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot more nuance to Arcane. I think everyone realizes that. They just meme about it, that it's like, oh, it's Arcane Blast, brr. But their new setup window for big payoff has been how Arcane works, or juggling your mana properly, even watching your mana on your cast if you're playing with the Equipoise window. There's more there, even if it's still just like Arcane Blast. But Havoc needs something, and Vengeance is closer to being done than Havoc is. But we'll have to wait and see. As a total sidebar here to end the video, once all this testing is done, if you haven't heard, I will be doing about 2-week segment, this is mid-June, where I'll be going back through everything for a feedback cycle, where I'll be putting together, with your help, live from chat, from YouTube comments. I'll be going back through every single video, individual spec video myself, and looking at what are the biggest things people mention, or the biggest suggestion points. I want to make a giant overall 36 specs, but overall I want to make a very concise, poignant list of feedback, the top 5, top 8 major things, suggestions, pain points, etc., to put forward to Blizzard, and to get that in front of Halinka, hopefully, and have that be a big community smush together feedback moment that isn't as staticky as putting it on, Reddit or the forums, or hoping that a blue post comes to you on the alpha forums, right? Which could happen, and still give your feedback, because you might have different ideas than I do. That's my plan, and that's what I'll be doing here on the channel. So, of course, again, if you enjoy the coverage, consider hitting that subscribe button right here on YouTube. During this entire time, trying to push over 100,000 subs on YouTube, maybe get that first play button, and feel like I've been doing this for 8 years. Maybe make it something that actually stands out. Put it behind me. I don't know. Just lick it. Put it on my Instagram. But the buttons are all down below. Check the channel guide if you missed any of the actual big testing streams, or if you want to see this dungeon video or any of the other dungeon runs, or it's all the bants and the talk and Word Up's terrible puns, or Noble talking about wine. It happens. That happens on a live stream. If you're missing out, if you're not going to the live streams, that's up to you. But my name's Bay. Oh, thank you very much for listening, and I will see you all in the next Alpha First Pass, First Impressions coverage video. Week of Fel continues. Warlock is up next.